Good afternoon and welcome to session 4 of day 1 of our 6th Streaming Media Connect. This is Streaming Media Connect West, where we had hoped to be in Huntington Beach this week, but alas, it was not to be. And every one of these events I have prefaced by saying, and we'll see you next in Boston or Huntington Beach. I'm not going to do that today because I don't want to jinx anything. But we do hope to be in Boston for Streaming Media East 2022 on May 24th and 25th, 2022. And in the meantime, we're going to be having another Streaming Media Connect virtual event in February. So subscribe to our newsletters if you haven't already. Check the website. We'll be opening up the call for speakers soon for both of those events. Before we jump into our discussion today with Jonathan Hurd from Altman Solon, talking about the future of sports on pay TV, OTT, and broadcast, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes. We will be using the Q&A for audience questions. Please don't raise your hand or put questions in the chat. If you put them in the Q&A, it's a lot easier for Jonathan and I to keep track of them. Also, live transcripts should be enabled. So if you're seeing live transcripts at the bottom of your screen and you wish to get rid of them, you can go to live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom window and click on that and then select disable transcript. I'd like to thank the diamond sponsors for Streaming Media West, and that's Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signient, and Video Guys. And we have a brief pre-roll message from them. Bill, take it away.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
VideoGuys.com is your source for live production gear, and we can help you start streaming today.
Reach a wider audience and tell your story using equipment like the RGB Link Mini family of 4 HDMI mixers, YOLO Live YOLO Box All-in-One touchscreen mixers, streamers, and recorders, and PTZ cameras and controllers, perfect for productions of all sizes without a large production crew.
Go to VideoGuys.com or call us at 800-323-2325 for help and start streaming today.
Thanks again to our sponsors. And one last housekeeping note, just for attending today, you're entered into a drawing for an Amazon gift card, and we'll announce the winner of that gift card at the end of the session. So I'd like to pass the mic over to our presenter, Jonathan Hurd from Altman Solon. Jonathan, we got to stop meeting like this.
Thanks very much, Eric, and excited to see that Streaming Media East will be in Boston. I'm actually joining from suburban Boston right now, Concord, Mass. So
wonderful. Well, I hope to see you in person in your own backyard next May. And let's jump right into the findings of your latest survey on global sports trends.
All right, I am going to share my screen and hopefully you'll see it momentarily.
Looks good.
Excellent. I want to start off by just acknowledging my colleague, Matt Del Percio, who wanted to be on, but at the last minute, he he couldn't join. He fell ill, and so you've got me for this. And I encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A, as Eric mentioned, and I'll keep an eye out for those. And if there's anything you ask that I can't answer, I will sync up with Matt afterwards, and we'll get back to you. Feel free to email us. So let's dive in. The first things I wanted to do is just to give a quick overview of who Altman Solon is. And then we're going to talk about global trends in sports. And a lot of that is based on a self-funded survey we ran this past summer in 16 countries around the world. And then we'll wrap up with a couple of thoughts on sports TV and video and its impact on pay TV. So first, Altman Solon, who are we? We're a strategy consulting firm, but completely focused on technology, media, and telecom. And so that means when we're engaged by clients in the TMT space, we get up to speed very quickly because everyone in the firm is focused on TMT. And we've actually grown quite a bit since I joined. We had 23 people when I joined 15 years ago, and now we have more than 500 people across 13 offices, largely due to a merger we did with our European partner, Solon. And the types of clients that we serve are across technology, media, and telecom. And in media, you can see the various types of clients, including sports teams, leagues. Betting is very hot right now, and a lot of activity, as you all are aware, in streaming services. We're right in the thick of that with some of the direct-to-consumer services. So let's dive into trends in sports. And there are really three broad topics to talk about here. One is around what's happening in the market and some of the trends we're seeing. And there was significant growth over the past decade. Obviously, the pandemic attenuated some of that, but we're actually seeing a good pickup now that we're in approaching, hopefully, the end of the pandemic. But certainly live sports have returned, and that's driven a lot of interest. And in terms of viewership and preference, that interest has returned, and consumption has gone back up, in some cases higher than it was even pre-pandemic. And we're also seeing a willingness to pay for sports content. And it always strikes, living here in the US, seeing the popularity of soccer, and you'll see that, we'll show you some slides, around the world is quite striking. And then in terms of opportunities, there are additional growth opportunities in monetization. I mentioned betting, but there are also things like collectibles and merchandise. So there are opportunities for further growth. So diving into the key trends we're seeing, internationalization is a major trend. Leagues and teams are seeking to turn their domestic audiences into global ones. We've got some slides you'll see on interest, and it is surprising how well some leagues and teams have done in broadening their interest in other markets. In terms of digitization, data monetization, leagues are increasingly adopting technology. A great example here around new fan experiences is StatCast. And, it's hard to imagine, for me at least, watching baseball games now without the not just the strike zone, but also things like exit velocity, how far the ball went, et cetera. Those are, they really add to the appreciation of the game. And then, of course, there are tailored products and apps. And gamification of a lot of these sports is on the rise. So teams are looking beyond their brands into target areas such as esports, amateur participation. One of the reasons that a lot of these leagues have become more global in their appeal is that they have cultivated amateur participation in other markets. So baseball in Latin America, for example, has become much more popular as a result, in some cases, of the MLB promoting it. But there are also other revenue streams, betting, collectibles, et cetera. And then in terms of regulation, competition, there are stricter budget controls, but also transformation of business models. Many leagues have recognized the importance of creating a degree of parity in their leagues so that teams can compete, things like salary caps, salary ratios, et cetera. And then changes to the game itself. I keep bringing up baseball. It's my favorite sport, but the game can lag sometimes. And so there have been changes made to like limit mound visits, et cetera. And then the fifth big area that we've been seeing lately is investments from institutional investors, PE firms targeting leagues and clubs to unlock their full commercial potential. So I mentioned earlier that sports had declined during the pandemic in terms of revenue. So this is the revenue by the 4 major US leagues. You can see it was significant growth. Like up until the pandemic, there was a 7.4% overall compound annual growth rate, but it dropped significantly due to the lack of live events and tickets during the pandemic. It is largely on the upswing now. And there have been other revenue sources like the NBA in particular, growing at nearly 10% CAGR, has attendance and merchandise sales that are allowing them to achieve faster growth. So as I mentioned at the outset, we have conducted now every year for the past several years an annual survey on sports and news. And in 2021, we conducted this survey, largely the same survey, across 16 different countries. Overall, we had more than 18,000 respondents. So it was very comprehensive. You can see the countries we covered there. And it allows us to do some comparisons of sports fandom, athletes, et cetera. You can see the topics that we covered on the right. So viewership, interest, and fandom, rankings of what we call entities, leagues, teams, and athletes. One of the interesting things we've done is saying which of these entities would cause you to watch a sport or to pay for a sport, and understanding whether it's the athletes or the leagues themselves that are driving interest. Online sports video awareness and usage, as well as correlating it to pay TV subscribership and usage. As everyone knows, live sports is one of the big reasons that people do subscribe to pay TV. So we were able to dig into that and see what the effect was. Also, to the extent the pandemic had an impact, we dug into that. And then interest in betting, gaming, collectibles, we asked a number of questions about those. So I have a selection of slides from this research to share with you. And again, feel free to ask questions in real time. So these are the leagues and competitions we looked at. We also covered, in addition to these 30 plus leagues, we had 150 different teams and athletes that we examined in terms of interest level. And so we got very granular, covering a wide range of sports and leagues around the world. One thing we asked about is, are you a sports viewer? And how frequently do you view sports? And this shows in the dark blue the percentage of respondents in each of these 16 countries who said they are a monthly sports viewer. So they're watching live sports at least once per month. And in the US, you could see it's 62% live viewers or regular monthly viewers versus 38% non-viewers. You know, in some of these countries, the numbers skew very high. And I think that's partly because there is just a lot of sports interest, and live sports are widely broadcast. And so the numbers are high there. I think also there is, to some extent, a little bit of bias in the survey respondents, but overall, what we were really interested in getting at is for these people who are watching sports at least monthly, you know, what are some of their interests and what are the drivers there? So this is a lot of information on this slide, but on the left side, it shows the ranking of the sports that based on the percentage of people who say that they view that sport monthly in each country. And in the US, not surprisingly, football is the highest. 33% say they watch it on a monthly basis. This is American football, obviously. And then Canada ice hockey, not surprisingly. But look at it all throughout LATAM and Europe, how soccer, AKA football in all those countries, finishes at the top. It's just very striking how much soccer drives sports viewing around the world. Australia, it's basketball. India, cricket, extremely popular, and also basketball in China. But you know, this really highlights how important soccer is on a global basis. American football shows up in a few countries: US, Canada, Mexico, and then a little bit in UK, Germany, France, Australia, and then India. But the other thing to look at here is look how tennis, how well it does across so many of these countries. And we'll get into that a little more as well. We also looked at league interest by country, and this is the percent of monthly sports viewers in each country who say that this league, it has an interest level of 4 or 5 out of 5. So in the US, we saw in the previous slide, 33% of people saying, of all people saying they watch it on a monthly basis. This is of those who are sports viewers, the percent that give football a rank of 4 or 5, and it's 63%. So very popular. In the US, baseball's also up there, as is the NBA. And one thing to notice on this slide is that if you look at the NFL, it's very, you know, strong green in the US, pretty green in other countries. Throughout LATAM and Europe, it's not as green in terms of the percentages. India, again, we saw that quite high. But looking down in the US, the Premier League, et cetera, these European soccer leagues actually do quite well from a percentage interest in the US. So we've seen this in other surveys we've done, that generally US sports, kind of this region here, these white stripes going across, don't do as well in Europe and LATAM on average as some of the European soccer leagues do outside their own countries. And again, you could see the home country of each of these leagues is a bright green by country. So it's an important takeaway that I mentioned soccer being so important across the world. Well, it's also popular, you know, in the US as well. We also looked at women's sports, and here tennis does very well across almost every country that we looked at. There are some standouts elsewhere, but it's it actually does very well, and we'll take a look at some of the stars there as well. So, get out your magnifying glass for this slide, but it is interesting. We looked at individual athletes and their popularity, and to the extent athletes were driving interest versus the teams or sports themselves. And in some sports, the athletes are even as popular as the team names, team brands, or the sport. So in the US, not surprisingly, we've got a couple of football stars. This is of those who watch sports on a monthly basis, the percent that said this athlete is one of their favorites. So Tom Brady, roughly half of the people who are watching sports regularly in the US say he's one of their favorites. Patrick Mahomes right up there. Steph Curry, LeBron James up there as well. Tiger Woods still in the top 5 here, and Serena Williams also there. It's interesting to look across, speaking of Serena Williams, and we talked about women's tennis. Look how well Serena does in many of these countries around the world as a popular athlete, and other tennis stars, individuals like Roger Federer also do well in many of these countries. It's also interesting to note that, Tom Brady leading with 49% interest. Look at Messi in Argentina, and even Messi showing up in other countries as well with a much higher popularity rate than Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes have in the US. So it's really interesting to see India, the top athletes are cricket players, and even a badminton player in China, who I have to admit I had not heard of before we started doing the research for this survey. And then if you look across these various countries, Lionel Messi, as we mentioned, does very well. Ronaldo, in tennis, we've got Federer, Nadal, Serena, all doing very well. And so there are athletes who are truly global in their appeal. I'm seeing a couple of questions. One, any data on collegiate or high school sports? And we have done research on NCAA and other leagues. We focused on professional sports for this survey, but send me a note afterwards and I can get you more information there. And in terms of the slides being available afterwards, again, my email will be on the final slide, and you just reach out and we can send you the slides. So over-the-top distribution of sports, it's happening gradually. So, the extent to which OTT is happening, well, why is OTT happening, or why are sports being delivered OTT? So for one thing, there's an increased number of additional features. So if you're watching sports over the top, you can have a more personalized experience. Things like time shifting, highlight videos, etc. You can engage at the same time you're actually watching the sport. That's one factor. Another is flexibility regarding content and payment. You don't necessarily, if you're a fan of just one sport, you don't necessarily have to sign up for an entire pay TV service. If it's available, if the rights are available, you can be more selective as a fan in terms of what you want to pay for and watch. There are also changes in rights management where rights holders are selling rights to others. So if Amazon is bidding for a sport, you can cut the events, and Amazon can have like Thursday Night Football, for example, in their portfolio, but you can retain rights, the lucrative rights for broadcast TV, retain those. And so there's a fragmentation that OTT creates, and the rights holders are seeking to maximize their licensing revenue by exploiting that. And then there are some cases where some leagues are going direct to consumer. NBA has a League Pass offer, which you can sign up for. Formula One, et cetera, have launched direct to consumer services. And then there are even some teams that are doing exclusive content via OTT themselves. So overall, there is a consumption and distribution move toward OTT. But it's not happening rapidly because leagues are seeing the bulk of their rights revenues through traditional services where the bulk of viewership still resides. And just to show how important sports rights can be for brands, DAZN is a very interesting example. In the US, awareness is relatively low compared to Netflix and Prime Video. But in other markets like Italy, where DAZN has the rights to Serie A, it actually is in the same range as Netflix and Prime Video in terms of awareness as a brand. So if you license rights to sports, live sports, it can significantly drive brand awareness. So, let's talk about some of the other sports ecosystem opportunities. There are not only media rights for broadcast, but sports events. So there are traditional games that teams sell, but also there are new sports experiences like tours, outposts, meetups, other live events that leagues and teams are exploring in order to supplement their revenue and increase fan engagement. There's also information and chats where, with that interactivity that OTT offers, there's just more opportunity for live fan engagement, not just over video, but audio, podcasts, et cetera. And so that's another way for leagues to engage and teams to engage with their fans. Fan clubs also is another method, and loyalty programs to boost growth. We've seen not a sports example, but Disney with their fan club and how important it was in accelerating adoption of Disney Plus. These loyal fans are really significant in terms of driving interest, and creating a membership opportunity for fans is a great way to engage with them. And then lastly, merchandise and collectibles, very strong potential. Messi's move to Paris Saint-Germain has his jersey sold out within minutes, and he's getting a part of the compensation as well. So there are examples of really merchandise and collectibles that have been very successful. And this is something that teams are going to continue to exploit. So in terms of these other sports-related activities, how much are fans interested in those? Well, we asked the monthly sports viewers about a lot of different kinds of events. So attending sports events, watching sports at pubs, restaurants, reading sports news, listening, etc. And you could see the high level of interest in a lot of these things by fans. And the US has a moderate level of interest, but in some countries, there's a very high level of interest expressed. LATAM, for example, very high level, 50% in some cases or more interest. Buying sports merchandise also was very high, particularly in LATAM. And even in India, China, we're seeing a very, very high interest level here. A question came up about NFTs. we'll get into that in a sec. There is certainly interest there. And here's a question: with OTT growing, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire play a role? A very, very good question. Let me get into that in a few slides, because there is an opportunity there as well. So here we are to this question about NFTs, and you can see the relative interest in things like digital fan tokens or digital player moments. We called them this in the survey just because we weren't sure if survey respondents would know what an NFT is, quite frankly. But you could see in terms of replica jerseys, they score very high: autographs, photographs, but there is definitely also emerging interest in these digital player moments and digital fan tokens as well. And again, India, China, for some reason, a lot of interest. LATAM, a lot of interest in the more kind of physical replica jerseys, autographs, and photographs. Okay, so let's talk about sports and TV and video. So one of the things we always ask about, and we're very interested in gleaning from our surveys and other research and analysis we do, is the impact of sports on pay TV services. So what we found is that monthly sports viewers in the US, 83% of them are subscribing to some kind of a live pay TV service. It could be a traditional cable TV service or a virtual MVPD service like a YouTube TV, Fubo TV, et cetera. And then non-viewers subscribe at a significantly lower rate, 66% of them. So sports is really critical to subscription. It's also really critical to viewing. So when we look at the number of hours per week that respondents spend watching TV overall, the monthly sports viewers are spending about 20 hours per week. And again, this is self-reported, so it's may differ somewhat from what Nielsen or others would say, but those who are not viewers report only 14 hours a week in terms of their viewership. So sports really drive subscription and engagement in pay TV. Looking across other countries in the survey, the light blue bars here are the percent of pay TV subscribers for those who are regular sports viewers. So we just saw in the prior slide, 83% subscription rate among monthly sports viewers, 66% rate among those who are not monthly sports viewers. And that gap generally exists across all of these countries. Interestingly, Colombia, very similar subscription rates. We're actually not exactly sure why that is. China also similar thing. Keep in mind though that the ARPUs of pay TV services in China and much of Latin America are quite a bit smaller. So it is likely just less of a financial burden in some of these LATAM countries to be a subscriber. But overall highlights globally the importance of sports to pay TV subscription. And we laid this out in a scatter plot here just to take a look at, on the y-axis, the number of hours of live sports watched per week. And on the x-axis, the number of hours of live TV or video watched per week. So the US, going back to that, again, 20 hours of live TV on average, and 3 hours of that is live sports. So quite a big disparity, whereas a much higher proportion in some developing countries is sports driven. And this shows in some countries, sports being a much higher proportion, much more important to the overall TV experience. And in the US, what causes you to select a video service? We asked respondents about how important different named sports content is. And not surprisingly, Sunday night football, Monday night football are right up there. NFC, a bit more of a driver than AFC. And college football is right in the mix as well around what's driving sports interest in the US. So all of those forms of football are ahead of MLB, NBA, and then we've got some local NBA. This would be like a regional sports network driving interest. I know for me personally, being able to watch Red Sox games in Nesson is a big driver of why I subscribe to pay TV. And then NCAA March Madness, also important. So 69% of respondents, in fact, said that they cited at least one sport as an important driver of their choosing a video service. In terms of content being named as important for driving, overall adoption in various streaming services, Netflix originals, and this is, by the way, just to compare to what to sports driving, Netflix originals, 57% of people said that was important. So as important as the NFL is, Netflix originals are actually driving the average consumer's interest in choosing a service, as are Amazon original and Disney as well. So there's quite a bit of other content that are driving people's interest in choosing video services, but sports, again, very critical, especially football. So given all this, we are starting to see some direct-to-consumer services, in other words, those that are owned by networks, using live sports and news content as a way to increase their subscriber counts. So Peacock is using Olympics coverage, for example. There will be Sunday Night Football available in addition to NBC this fall, or there is. And then some English Premier League games exclusively on Peacock. Paramount Plus has had CBS, so you can watch your local CBS channel on Paramount Plus. And also you can see live sports and news coverage. And then also soccer coverage, again, Paramount Plus using that. ESPN Plus will have at big events starting in 2023 with Monday Night Football, NBA games, and NHL, rights deal includes national broadcasts and out-of-market games on ESPN Plus. So there is a lot of incentive right now for these networks to increase subscriber counts on their direct-to-consumer streaming services. And for some of them, sports is a big part of that. And so, what are we seeing in terms of migration? Well, subscription services, streaming services have traditionally used library content and exclusive content or originals to drive subscription services. And now we're starting to see gradually, live sports, which were originally exclusively available on broadcast or linear pay TV. And now, for example, some NFL games can be streamed on both Peacock and Amazon. And so gradually there's this move to OTT. It's inevitable as viewership shifts to OTT that these rights are going to be made available. Still, the vast majority of viewership is on traditional linear pay TV or broadcast TV. And so those rights are still largely there, but we are going to be seeing increasing moves to OTT adoption. So that is it for the presentation. I'm going to shift over and see what questions I've missed here and see if I can address some of those. So there's one around Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and yeah, potentially. It's all a matter of, are there enough viewers there? Are there, do those platforms have, does the business case make sense for them to license themselves any of this content? Or is it better for them as a technology platform to actually facilitate apps and services being on their platforms? So the economics could change overall, but we are going to be seeing increasingly more adoption on OTT and more rights flowing in that direction. Should I sell my baseball cards and invest that in NFT? Personally, I wouldn't, but it's a matter of what risks you're willing to take and where you think the market will go. I mean, clearly there's a lot of attention in NFTs, non-fungible tokens, but we'll see what happens there. I am more of a physical, signed baseballs or baseball cards aficionado myself. Viewing habits been impacted by COVID? Yeah, positively or negatively. Clearly, sports took the biggest hit in terms of viewership. Streaming services that didn't rely on live content surged during the pandemic, but now we're seeing things getting a lot more back to, quote, normal. But in terms of consumer awareness of streaming and use of streaming, the pandemic did seem to accelerate consumers' familiarity and comfort with watching any kind of content on a streaming basis. So there is certainly a resurgence of interest in watching sports and almost like pent-up demand in many ways. But streaming services, on-demand streaming services, got a big boost from the pandemic. And then big deal Thursday Night Football moving to Amazon. It's certainly one way to watch football now that, and there's enough volume that Amazon felt it was worth spending for those rights. But again, it's gradual, and we'll see how the audience shifts. But nothing, given there is still so much money to be made on traditional linear, that a lot of the focus is still going to be there. Let's see. Promoting services. Is it important for Roku and Amazon to promote their services to make it easier for viewers to watch and be more aware of their services as opposed to linear TV? Look, the viewership is happening. It's probably being driven by connected TVs, the size of TVs and affordability of, the prices with which you can get even an 85-inch TV now. And it's interesting. Our research years ago and the prevailing thought in the industry is that mobile was where it's going to be at, and that younger consumers especially would shift a lot of their viewership to mobile. And we've always found in our research that consumers of all ages prefer watching on a connected TV or on a TV period, a large screen. And although for younger consumers, the difference in interest wasn't as great, it was still TVs that they were most interested in. And with affordability and with availability of devices and ease of use, it's not surprising to us that connected TVs are growing and that services that made their content available only on mobile were unlikely to be successful. So connected TV is what's really driving that interest, and there are a number of different options there. Let's see. Oh, I'm seeing things not only in the Q&A. Let's see. Oh, here's one. Baseball TV ratings are way behind NFL, even for playoffs. How do you account for the high 4 or 5 rankings in your survey? Just that there's a lot of core baseball fans. Football has more fans, but there are plenty of people out there that still like baseball, like watching baseball. So, I think that's why we saw high interest level in the survey. I'm going to see if I can pick up a few questions here that were sent in the chat. Olympics, difficult to consume. Interesting. Okay, this is not so much a question, but a comment. Let's see, as a smaller live event producer, I'm looking at the different ways to offer this to my clients. The one thing that I worry about is the Wi-Fi and audio. What are some ways to handle this? I'm not so sure about the question, and I'm Wi-Fi and audio not as familiar with what the issue might be there. I do have to say, though, that video production in general for smaller events has become incredibly more affordable and possible with devices like LiveView and others that allow you to broadcast, whether it's news gathering or live sports events, without a broadcast truck and using cellular connections in order to upload the content from events. So it's just become much more economical to actually produce live sports events, even on a smaller basis. Let's see, NFL and college are way ahead of other sports because they nicely support local broadcast antenna TV. Isn't it short-sighted the others don't? NFL TV deals as good for over-the-air as ever too. Yeah, I think what's being said here is that you can watch for free over the air many different NFL and college events. And, it's just a matter of, is the audience there? And can the broadcasters afford the rights given the audience and the advertising they're going to be able to sell off it? So it's for some sports, it's a lot better than others. Okay. And, oh, good. Thank you, Eric. Sessions focused on hybrid and REMI production. Excellent. Very good. Okay, I think I have covered all the questions I'm seeing here. Oh, sports betting. Yes, we did address sports betting. And I guess the takeaways there are, it definitely increases engagement. It's hard to say exactly what the causality is around viewing. In other words, am I going to start betting and viewing more, or am I already viewing quite a bit? And perhaps I've been engaged in non-illegal, quote, betting, like fantasy sports. What's clearly betting is going to increase engagement, but the population in which it's going to increase engagement may be rather limited. But it's certainly a really interesting revenue enhancer, and people are diving into it. So it's a great question. Let's see, quality streaming is becoming more reliable, but the replay of non-mainstream programming should be addressed. Do you see this as a business need? I am personally not as familiar with the technology issues of replay. I think that's what it's talking about, but not sure about that question. And then how can an independent content creator streamer get on some of these numbers, or is it locked down to leagues looking to expand their services or viewership? Look, sports rights are very closely guarded, and they're very lucrative for the league. So there's a lot of attention paid to maximizing the ROI of media rights. In terms of, how to get into this interest in sports, if you're an independent content creator, it's hard to say. I think there are some niche sports around the world, and we recently created this database with, a few hundred sports around the world. There may be opportunities to take some of these which are highly niche and invest in them and invest in fan engagement. And I mean, it's just incredible how certain parts of the world have sports that are highly localized to their markets. So there very well could be opportunities to tap into a very localized interest level and monetize that.
I just wanted to chime in on that because I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, and we've seen any number of independent content producers create unofficial but somewhat sanctioned shoulder content around major sporting events. Cheesehead TV is the one I'm thinking of here in Wisconsin. Was actually started by the folks who run LiveX in New York City, and Corey, one of the owners, is from Green Bay. At any rate, Cheesehead TV has been around for a while. They've managed to gain some degree of press access, but they also broadcast on, I think it's on Twitch. They broadcast a watch party for every Packers game where Corey and Aaron Nagler provide their color commentary. And so that's a way for independent content producers to get in on some of this interest without having to worry at all about the rights themselves.
Oh, it's a great example. Yeah. Cool. Well, Eric,
that was great stuff.
Good. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it, and enjoyed all the questions. And please feel free. I don't think I did share my email on the last slide, but it's jonathan.hurd@altmansolon.com. And I will, if you email me, I will also get Matt Del Percio in the loop, who, again, wishes he could have joined, but couldn't at the last minute.
Terrific. We appreciate it so much. Thank you again, Jonathan. Thanks to everyone for joining and asking so many questions. Jonathan, someone asked if you could just type your email address into the chat.
Yep, doing it right now.
Excellent. And I'd like to thank our diamond sponsors, Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signient, and Video Guys for helping make Streaming Media West Connect possible. The Amazon gift card winner for this session is Jody Weaver. Jody, be on the lookout for an email from us, and we will be back in about 35 minutes with our next panel, which is all about the future of monetization, AVOD, SVOD, FAST, and all the other acronyms that you might possibly discover between now and 4 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks.
Thanks again.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
Videoguys.com is your source for live production gear, and we can help you start streaming today.
Reach a wider audience and tell your story using equipment like the RGB Link Mini family of 4 HDMI mixers, YOLO Live YOLO Box All-in-One touchscreen mixers, streamers, and recorders, and PTZ cameras and controllers, perfect for productions of all sizes without a large production crew.
Go to videoguys.com or call us at 800-323-2325 for help and start streaming today.